You get home, door shuts, shoes off, no small talk, no checking if someone's mad at you, just quiet. And instead of feeling lonely, your body drops into this calm focus. That's the part people don't get. Voluntary solitude isn't the same as isolation. Psychologists separate "I like being alone" from "I'm scared to be single." Those are two different things. One is a preference, the other is fear. And the traits tied to fear look a lot like emotional volatility. So let's break down what your alone time is really saying about your mind. Have you ever noticed how the first hour alone feels like chewing on air, and then out of nowhere your brain starts to stack things in order? Imagine you block off 4 hours. No phone, no music, no just checking anything. You put a cup in the sink, you wipe a counter, you walk from room to room like you forgot what you came in for. At first, it's not peaceful, it's itchy. You reach for your pocket even though you left your phone in the other room. You open a tab in your mind like, what am I missing? You feel a weird urge to text someone just to prove you still exist. Most people tap out right here. They call it loneliness. They call it boredom. But that first wave is often just your brain doing a detox from constant input and social checking. Your nervous system is used to little hits all day. A ping, a scroll, a glance at who liked what. So when you remove all that, your brain doesn't go quiet. It gets loud, not because you're broken, because the noise was holding other stuff down. Psychologists call this the default mode network, the DMN. It's the part that turns on when you stop reacting and start reflecting. When you're not aiming your mind at a task, not reading faces, not tracking a group chat, this system starts connecting dots on its own. It pulls up old talks you thought you forgot. It drags half-done plans back into view. It runs little clips of your life and asks one simple question. What does this mean? And once it's on, it's weirdly useful. This is where you replay a problem, but you catch the pattern you missed when you were rushing. Like you're going over an email thread, and you suddenly see the same issue show up in 3 spots. Not because you stared harder, because you finally had space to hold the whole thing in your head. It's the shower idea, but on purpose. You're sitting there staring at a wall and your brain goes, wait, that's why that meeting fell off. Or, oh, that's the real reason I keep pushing that project to tomorrow. The answer isn't magic. It's just uninterrupted time. But here's the key point. This wasn't isolation. It was digital detachment. Isolation is when you want people and can't reach them. When you're cut off. When you're stuck. Voluntary solitude is different. It's when you choose quiet so your mind can process without performing for anyone. Think about it. You're alone, but you're not helpless. You could call someone if you needed to. You're just not. And in that choice, your executive function gets a break. You stop managing everyone's tone. You stop adjusting your words. You stop doing that tiny math problem of how will this look every time you think something, so your brain can do deeper work. Here's a small scene. You sit down at the table with a blank page. You don't force a plan. You just let the silence sit there. 10 minutes pass. Then 15. You stop fighting the urge to get up. And then it hits you. There's one detail from last week that fixes the whole work issue. One line you ignored. One step you skipped. You write it down. Not because you got smarter in that moment. Because you stopped getting interrupted long enough for the DMN to stitch the pieces together. Research shows this network is tied to self-reflection, creative insight, and meaning-making. So the blank time isn't blank. It's background computing. Your mind is sorting, saving, connecting. Which is why most people never feel the payoff. They never stay alone long enough to cross the switch. Past that point, alone time stops being empty and starts being useful. But here's the thing. If solitude gives you this edge, why do people still treat "I like being alone" like a red flag? That's where the personality data gets really blunt. Most assume people who like being alone are anxious, awkward, or secretly sad. But research tells a different story once you measure the right thing. Because alone is not one lane. It's two very different stories that get smashed into one label. Psychologists split it with two scales. One is called desire for being alone. That's preference. You score high if being by yourself feels calm, like your shoulders drop and your thoughts spread out. You don't see solo time as punishment. You see it as relief. The other is basically fear of being single, just flipped around. That's comfort with single life. It's not about whether you date. It's about whether the idea of being on your own makes you tense. The fear voice says, if I end up alone, something is wrong with me. The comfort voice says, I'll be okay either way. But here's the thing. A lot of studies don't separate those two. They just grab a pile of single people and ask, what are you like? And then you get a muddy headline like, singles are more introverted. Yeah, because you mix two groups, the ones who picked it and the ones who feel stuck in it. Now zoom in on the unafraid group, the people who don't panic at the thought of being single. Research shows they often look healthier than the stereotype. Lower neuroticism, higher openness, often more conscientious and agreeable too. Think about what that actually means. Lower neuroticism isn't some fancy trait. It's how you move through a normal day. You get a weird text, you don't spin for 3 hours. You don't write a whole story in your head about how you're being left. You see silence and you don't auto-translate it into anger. You can sit with not knowing for a bit. And you don't need a relationship to prove you're okay. That doesn't mean you don't want love. It means your self-worth isn't hanging from it like a hook. So you don't chase closeness just to stop feeling uneasy. Psychologists call this internal locus of control. Simple idea. You feel like your life responds to your choices more than your status. So when a relationship starts getting weird, you don't freeze. You don't beg for crumbs. You don't wait for a sign. You just look at the facts and move. Think about it. You're in something that drains you. The talks go in circles. The rules keep changing. Your executive function gets eaten up by guessing moods and fixing tension. An internal locus of control makes you say, nope, I can leave. Not in a cold way, in a clean way. Here's the social twist people miss. Some unafraid singles are not less social. They can be more extroverted than the people who fear being single. So they're not hiding from people. They're not cut off. They go out, they laugh, they flirt, they host dinner. They just don't outsource their emotional regulation to a partner, meaning they don't use a relationship like a pressure valve. They don't need someone on call to calm their nervous system. They can self-soothe. They can take a walk. They can sit in quiet. They can let mirror neurons do their job in a crowd without needing one person to lock onto. Now, separate that from the people who score high on desire for being alone, because that's another mix-up. If you like being alone, the main difference is often sociability, not brokenness. You've developed a higher threshold for social stimulation, so you don't need constant people noise to feel alive. You can enjoy people and still want space. You can be warm and still want your own room. This wasn't rejection, it was regulation. So preferring to be alone isn't a flaw by default. In the big 5 patterns, the healthiest signal isn't alone. It's not afraid. The fear predicts the volatility. The choice predicts stability and curiosity. Which brings us to the part nobody warns you about. Even when solitude is healthy, people still judge it. So you need rules that keep it in the high-performance zone, not the shutdown zone. The alone time you're supposed to fear is often your brain's best work mode, as long as you chose it and you can walk back into people when you want to. So run a clean test this week. 1 4-hour block, no feeds, no noise. You feel the first hour itch. Then you watch what your mind builds when it's not performing for anyone. If 4 hours feels big, start with 10 or 15 minutes. A journal page, a quiet walk. Research shows this kind of structure boosts focus and cuts stress. Drop a comment and share your story. Hit like and subscribe because we dive deep into psychology that actually explains how your mind works.